Are you ready for a show that talks sports from the fans' point of view?
We've seen Michael Jordan score 37 points a game in his era. How many could he score in today's NBA?
There's not a player out there who I'd rather have than LeBron James.
Are you ready for a show that isn't afraid to challenge anyone when it comes to sports? If Adam Silver really wanted to fix tanking in the NBA, he would stop rewarding teams by giving them the best chance to win the draft lottery.
I mean, how many times will Roger Goodell drop the ball on handling domestic violence in the NFL?
Look, athletes have every right to talk politics, but if the fans stop tuning in, that's their right.
Then you're ready for Talk Back, a podcast where two fans debate the media narrative and discuss the world of sports as we see it.
Welcome to the show.
It's time for another edition of Talk Back, and if you have followed us throughout the season, you know that we were on vacation the last couple of weeks. Justin, I don't know about you, but the break was actually kind of good for me. I know my family went to Virginia Beach, yours went to Myrtle Beach, and there was a lot of sports going on, and yet nothing that was huge and breaking that made us feel like we needed to remote in and needed to push an episode out. So for me, I kind of enjoyed that break.
Well, you can't ever get away from sports that much, but yeah, it was not. I mean, I missed you though. I mean, I missed being behind the studio. I've been doing shows in hospital waiting rooms and trying to find out how to get away from crying babies to find the time. So I know my wife's been happy that we haven't had to do the show because I've gotten to be on baby duty a lot more and helping change diapers and rock babies to sleep and keep our daughter occupied. So even though we haven't been doing shows, man, I'm tired. I've been busy.
I bet. Well, from what I've seen on Facebook, it looks like Jax is doing really well. It looked like he was actually quite a happy boy on vacation. So I'm glad that you guys had a good time. We have a lot to talk about tonight, though, because the preseason NFL is underway. So here we are recording on a Tuesday night as we normally do. Justin and I are both in studio looking across the desk at one another. We've got NFL on our minds. And in segment 2, we've got Tiger on the brain. Justin, Tiger Woods was pretty impressive this past weekend. So in segment 2, I've got a couple of questions for you. Just as a fan, did you enjoy what you saw at the PGA Championship? Were you surprised that Tiger Woods was in the mix and truly in the mix come crunch time on Sunday afternoon? And is the PGA capitalizing on some of these young guns the way that they need to be? So all of that in segment 2. But first, when we get back, it's segment 1, NFL. I know you'll lead us through the AFC East and the AFC North. What do we think is going to happen this year for those 8 teams?
Welcome back. It's time for part 1 of our NFL preview shows. Last year, we had some fun. We did each individual division. This year, a little more pressed for time, so we're actually going to combine, and we're going to do the AFC East and the AFC North tonight. Last year, something our listeners really liked was the fact that we took the Vegas win totals, and we actually worked those into our previews of each division, talked about if we thought teams would be over or under the win total that Vegas had. We're going to do that again this year, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. We feel that each team sort of has one big question that surrounds them. A lot of it has to do with quarterback play, and we got to start with the team that, not a surprise, that Vegas has with the lowest expected win total in the AFC East. That is the New York Jets, coming off of a 5-11 season where actually last year they probably outperformed what we thought they were going to be. I actually didn't think that they were going to win any games, maybe one game last year, especially when you looked at that roster early on. This past offseason, they make the move. They jump up from 6 to 3 in the draft. They take quarterback Sam Darnold out of USC. So I'm sitting across from a resident Jets fan here, Eric. Sam Darnold looked pretty good in preseason game 1. Josh Norman came out this week, gave him a lot of praise from the joint practices they're having with Washington. So when should the Jets start Sam Darnold this year?
Justin, I was hoping you were going to ask me that because, as you know, I wasn't very high on Baker Mayfield. So when they drafted Sam Darnold, I was pretty excited about that. But now you see where having Teddy Bridgewater and the quarterback that did a little bit of damage last year, at least overperform what we thought, Josh McCown, I think you have options there. So I'm going to keep this real short and sweet. Sam Darnold should not be your starting quarterback in week 1. He's a huge asset to that organization, probably the best prospect quarterback that they've had in many, many years. You need to protect that asset right now. I would actually start Teddy Bridgewater, but here's the plan that I would have with him. He looked pretty good in preseason game 1. Now, I know preseason doesn't show us much. There's a lot of moving pieces there, a lot of second and third stringers. Nobody gets too high on the preseason. I mean, even the Cleveland Browns, they went 4-0 last year in preseason and then looked quite messy in the regular season. So we don't want to get too high on what happens in the preseason. But if it were me running that team, I would certainly start Teddy Bridgewater, get his trade value up, then I would move him before the trade deadline, then put in Josh McCown to finish out the season, allowing Sam Darnold to sit back and learn, stay healthy. I think 1 year under his belt as a backup QB will do them a world of good, and then he is your guy moving forward for 2019, 2020, and beyond. Justin, for me, that's the direction I would go.
Look, we've seen experiments work where you throw guys into the fire, and it's a hard transition to just jump into it. I think we can both agree the Jets don't look like a playoff team right now, so why are you going to rush him in there? Let him learn behind a guy. You have McCown there to teach him and help him understand the NFL game, how to prepare, how to watch film, how to take care of his body through the week, what to study, what to look for, those type of things to help him with that transition. Why do you just want to throw him to the Wolves right away? This Jets team's not ready to win right now, so why do that to him? Let him come in when the expectations will be lower. That'll sort of be a theme throughout this show is these quarterbacks that have been drafted, there's a lot of them out there. But the one thing that we always see is when teams wait, the expectations change. You don't expect the second string guy to come in and all of a sudden save the team. You just want to root for him and see him play. It's kind of like that college feel to it where you're kind of rooting for this sort of underdog type story and watching a guy. I think the Jets would be better off to do that with Darnold. I actually think Teddy Bridgewater might get moved before camp is out. You've got teams like Denver that are sitting out there that have a 7th-round pick that they've moved into their second position in terms of depth chart, where if Case Keenum goes down, do they really want to turn the keys over to Chad Kelly, or do they want it to be a guy like Teddy Bridgewater that can come in and actually help Case Keenum? He's been with him last year in Minnesota. So I look for Denver to maybe be in play for Teddy Bridgewater to trade for him because he's not going to play for this team. It's going to be McCown. And then when the Jets, if they go out and struggle, or even if they go, 3-3 and then they lose 2 in a row or whatever and they turn it over, it's going to be to Sam Darnold. It's not being to Teddy Bridgewater. They'll keep McCown around. Even Johnny Manziel talked about how good Josh McCown was for his career, helping him learn. So I think definitely wait on Sam Darnold. This team's not close. He's going to be your future for what Jets fans probably hope for the next decade plus. Don't go out there and ruin his confidence early on. You look at some of the best quarterbacks in this league. They're all guys that sat and waited. Very rarely, Carson Wentz might be the guy that sort of broke the mold. And even he didn't come out and necessarily light it up and take the Eagles to the playoffs in the first year. It helped him. But even a guy like Jared Goff, he sat for 8 games. He still struggled, but his second year he came in and played a lot better. I think that's the pathway. They should go for Sam Darnold. Vegas, Eric, has the Jets at 6. So do you like over or under 6 wins for this 2018 Jets team?
Due to the fact that they've got a couple of games against the Bills and the Dolphins, who I actually think we're going to struggle this year, I think that the quarterback play, whether it's McCown for his additional year there or bringing Darnold or Bridgewater in, I think the quarterback play is going to be worth a couple of wins. Not only that, they've got Robbie Anderson staying. Hopefully Enunwa coming back from injury. They've got some wide receiver depth there. Now, I don't know what Terrell Pryor is going to do because I was excited about that initially.
Getting yelled at by Todd Bowles, apparently.
Yeah, but rumor is he's just not having a good practice in preseason anyway, so who knows about that. I got to go with the over, though, but not by much. I'm going to give them 7.
7. I'm going to go under. I think they'll be 5-11. Again, I think they're going to be pushing there. I think they'll start McCown. They're going to play him probably close to that 6-week, 8-week mark, and then they're going to turn it over to Darnold. That's what I see them going, but I think they're still going to struggle. You look at their running backs, they just don't have that guy anymore. Not that they have really in the other years, but even like basically retreads, Isaiah Crowell, Thomas Rawls, just a bunch of guys that are just guys. They're nice role players, but they're not a bell cow back. You talked about their wide receivers. Robbie Anderson was in the back of a police car just a few months ago, so he's a powder keg. Terrell Pryor looked like he was going to be a stud for the Redskins. He did nothing last year, and his biggest camp contribution so far has been the fact he got yelled at by Todd Bowles for talking about injuries. It just seems like there's a lot of pieces that the Jets are going to need going forward. I don't think they have them this year, but I think they have a nice foundation to build on going forward. The next team that Vegas has in the AFC East in terms of win total will be the Buffalo Bills. They are coming off a 9-7 season where they actually made the playoffs, but they've made some pretty significant changes on this team. Starting at quarterback, they traded Tyrod Taylor to the Cleveland Browns. They brought in and signed A.J. McCarron. They drafted Josh Allen. So this Buffalo team, Eric, they came off a run where they got into the playoffs. It seems like they've taken one step back to hopefully go two steps forward. Do you like that approach, or should they have taken that team with Tyrod Taylor and tried to build around him and continue those playoff runs?
I like what they've done. I think they're building for the future. I think there was something in Tyrod that they didn't like. They didn't see it in the time that he was there. They go with a guy like Allen and hope that the future is bright. Again, same with the Jets. I mean, you've got these teams that have been perennial losers in the AFC East. They've got to make a huge change. Quarterback is probably the most impactful position on the field. But here's the problem. I just don't think that it's going to have enough impact on their season, and we'll get into it here in just a minute with the over-under and what we think is going to happen there. But they've got a tough road ahead in this season, and I just don't think they have enough changes, although they're going in the right direction, to make huge gains in 1 year.
No, I agree. I think they made the right move by moving Tyrod out. Look, they clearly wanted to go in a different direction. They tried to go in a different direction last year. Remember, they went out to L.A. They start Nathan Peterman versus the Chargers, and Nathan Peterman, for some reason, thought he was starting for the Chargers because that's the only team he wanted to throw the football to. A complete disaster, train wreck in the first half. They turn it back over to Tyrod, but you could tell that they've been trying to move on from him for a while. So they had to do this. I think, yes, they may have had this year, they could have made a run at the playoffs, but their future probably looked pretty bleak. At least with Josh Allen, if he's a star, the hope is that, yeah, then you're a playoff contender for the next decade. And you start to think about the Patriots, when is Tom Brady's window going to close? Now is the time when, if you're an AFC East team, that you want to be where the Jets are and the Bills are, building with young quarterbacks, because the hope is for them that, okay, we just got to live out Brady the next 2 or 3 seasons. And when he's gone, hopefully Belichick's gone, and they're not going to be the juggernaut anymore that we've had to face. We can sort of take over this division. So from that standpoint, I like what the Bills did. It's almost a move they had to do. The Bills are not going to knock off the Patriots and win the division. That means they're going to be fighting for a wild card position. They're going to go on the road and probably get beat in week 1 and again be stuck with a late first-round draft pick, and they're never going to get any better. At least this way, they can go somewhere. They have a direction for this team. So I ultimately like the move that they made. Vegas, Eric, they have the Bills at 6.5. So do you like over, under 6.5 wins for the Buffalo Bills?
I honestly don't know where they're getting 6.5 wins. I'm going to take the under. Justin, listen to their schedule as they open up. They open up at Baltimore, which they have a fighter's chance at, but then they've got the Chargers, then they're at Minnesota, at Green Bay, they've got Tennessee, then at Houston, at Indianapolis, then New England, then Chicago, which Chicago we'll talk about in a few weeks. I think they're far better than they were last year. Then they go to the Jets in the Meadowlands before their bye. So that's their first 10 games. I don't see but maybe a win or two right in there. And so you think, okay, so to get to 7 and take the over, they'd have to do well after the bye. Hey, guess what? They've got Jacksonville. They've got Detroit. They're at New England. They've got other tough games after the bye. Justin, I'm taking the under. I don't see any possible way they get to 7.
No, I agree with you on this one. I'm going under as well. One thing we didn't talk about was the kind of the common opponents that this division will face is the AFC South, which I think is going to be one of the, maybe the best division in football when you start to look at those 4 teams that we'll talk about next week on the show. And then they're going to have the NFC North, where you already know that the Packers and the Vikings are going to be very good teams. And then Detroit's always a team that hovers around that 500 mark. And like you said, the Bears are a team that are trending upwards. So definitely not an easy schedule from that standpoint. They were second in their division, so they're going to basically play the 2 seeds from the other divisions that they don't play in, the West and the North. It's just not an easy schedule. I agree. I don't know where they're getting 5 wins. I think they'll be under the 6.5 mark. So let's move it on to the Miami Dolphins. Vegas has them as basically having the third most wins. They're tied with the Bills actually at 6.5. But let's talk about this team first before we get there. Last year, this time in training